Deep in a forest, hidden from the world, there was a village called Senkoro. It was a quiet place, surrounded by trees and the soft sound of the wind. The people of the village didn't talk much. They seemed tired, like something heavy weighed on their hearts. But there was one thing that made Senkoro famous: the smell of food. The delicious aroma came from a small kitchen run by a woman named Deka. Everyone loved her food. It was said to make the sick healthy and fill the sad with joy. People traveled from far away just to taste it. But while some called Deka a gift to the village, others whispered strange things about her. They said her magic meals came at a price. Deka didn't cook like other people. She never used a recipe book or spices from the market. Instead, she would kneel on the ground, press her ear to the earth, and listen. She said the whispers of the earth told her what to make. These whispers weren't just in her head. They were from spirits, ancient voices only she could hear. But the spirits didn't speak for free. They wanted something in return. For every meal she cooked, she had to take something from her customers. It wasn't money or food, it was their life essence, the energy that made them who they were. Most didn't even realize what they were losing. As time passed, Deka's food became more popular. But the whispers grew louder, hungrier, and harder to ignore. The spirits demanded more, and Deka couldn't stop listening. She began to fear the whispers, but she couldn't escape them. One day, a group of travelers came to Senkoro. They had heard about the village and Deka's famous food. The group was tired from their long journey, and the smell of cooking pulled them closer like a warm hug. Among the travelers was Nia, a young herbalist who knew about plants and healing. She noticed something strange right away. The villagers looked lifeless. Their eyes were dull, and their movements were slow, almost like they were sleepwalking. Some had odd marks on their arms, faint, twisted shapes that seemed to pulse faintly under the skin. Nia felt uneasy, but the others brushed it off, excited to try Deka's magical food. When the travelers reached Deka's kitchen, they saw her standing by a pot, stirring something that filled the air with an incredible smell. She welcomed them warmly, her voice soft and soothing. "Sit, eat," she said with a smile. But Nia couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The travelers sat around a wooden table as Deka served them bowls of steaming stew. The food was like nothing they had ever tasted, rich, warm, and comforting. Each bite seemed to make their tired bodies feel lighter and their minds sharper. But as Nia ate, she noticed the whispers. They were faint but clear, like soft voices floating in the air. She glanced at the villagers, who sat nearby in a daze, eating without emotion. Then she looked at Deka, who seemed to listen to something no one else could hear. Nia stopped eating, her stomach turning. She could sense something unnatural in the room, as if the walls themselves were watching. "What is this place?" she thought. She needed answers, but she had no idea how dangerous the truth would be. That night, Nia couldn't sleep. The whispers she had heard at dinner haunted her. They weren't just in her head, they seemed to echo through the whole village. Quietly, she slipped out of the hut where the travelers were staying and began to explore. The village was eerily silent. Shadows stretched across the ground as the moonlight struggled through the thick forest canopy. Nia's eyes were drawn to Deka's kitchen, where a faint glow flickered through the window. Curiosity pulled her closer. Peeking inside, she saw Deka kneeling on the floor, her ear pressed firmly to the ground. Her lips moved as if she was speaking to someone, though the room was empty. Suddenly, Deka's voice broke the silence. "Yes, I will prepare more. They trust me. They always trust me." Nia's heart raced. She crept away, her mind spinning. Who was Deka talking to? And what did she mean by they? Something was very wrong with Deka's food, and Nia was determined to find out what it was. The next morning, Nia tried to act normal, but she couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. As she walked through the village, she noticed the strange marks on the villagers' arms again. The twisted shapes seemed darker now, like they had grown overnight. She approached an elderly woman sitting outside her hut. "Excuse me," Nia said gently. "What are those marks on your arm?" The woman looked at her blankly, as if she didn't understand the question. Then, in a flat, hollow voice, she said, "Deka's food keeps us alive. The marks are a blessing." Nia felt a chill run down her spine. These weren't blessings, they were signs of something far worse. Whatever Deka was doing to these people, it wasn't healing them. It was draining them. Nia knew she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She had to warn the travelers and uncover the truth about Deka before it was too late. Back at the hut, Nia hurriedly gathered the group of travelers. They were lounging, still marveling at how good they felt after the meal. "You don't understand," Nia said, her voice urgent. "Something is wrong with this village, and with Deka." The others looked at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" one of them asked. Nia explained what she had seen the night before and what she had discovered about the strange marks on the villagers. "The food isn't just magical. It's taking something from them, something important. The villagers are being drained, and I think we might be next." The group was skeptical. "Maybe you're imagining things," one said. "That stew fixed my aching legs. How can it be bad?" But Nia stood firm. "Think about the villagers. Look at their eyes, their movements. They're empty inside. That's not normal." One of the travelers, a man named Kofi, finally spoke up. "I believe her. I noticed those marks too, and the villagers seem off. We need to be careful." Slowly, the others nodded, unease settling over the group. As the day went on, the whispers grew harder to ignore. They seemed to follow Nia wherever she went, soft but constant, like a song playing in another room. The other travelers began to hear them too. "What is that sound?" one whispered nervously. Nia felt a growing sense of urgency. The whispers weren't just sounds, they were warnings. She could feel them pulling her toward Deka's kitchen. "We need to investigate," Nia said. "I think the answers are in her kitchen." Kofi hesitated. "What if she catches us?" "Then we'll find out the truth," Nia replied. "We can't stay here and do nothing." As night fell, Nia and the group prepared to sneak into Deka's kitchen. The air was heavy, the whispers louder than ever. It was as if the spirits themselves were watching, waiting for what was about to happen. Under the cover of darkness, Nia and the travelers crept toward Deka's kitchen. The glow of the cooking fire lit up the window, and the air was thick with the smell of spices and herbs. Nia's heart pounded as she pushed the door open slowly, the old wood creaking under her touch. Inside, the room was unlike anything they expected. Pots and pans hung from the walls, but the shelves were lined with strange jars filled with glowing liquids and unrecognizable herbs. A large stone slab in the center of the room served as a table, and the walls seemed to hum with energy. Kofi pointed to the floor. In the dirt, there were marks, circles and symbols carved deep into the ground. "What is this?" he whispered. Nia knelt to examine the carvings. They pulsed faintly, as if alive. It's a ritual," she said, her voice trembling. "This is how she communicates with the spirits." Suddenly, a loud whisper filled the room, rising like a wave. It was sharp, cold, and impossible to ignore. The group froze as the shadows in the room seemed to stretch and twist. "Someone is here," the whisper hissed. Before anyone could move, the door slammed shut behind them. Deka stood there, her face calm but her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "What are you doing in my kitchen?" she asked softly, her voice dripping with menace. The travelers stepped back, but Nia stood her ground. "We know what you're doing, Deka," she said. "The marks on the villagers, the whispers, the food, it's all part of some curse." Deka smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was cold and knowing. "You think you understand," she said. "But you don't. The whispers keep this village alive. Without me, there would be nothing here but dust and forgotten graves." "That's not true," Nia snapped. "You're stealing from them." You're draining their lives to feed your power. Deka's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you've stepped into, child. The spirits demand more now. And tonight, they'll have it. Before Nia could respond, the ground beneath their feet began to shake, and the whispers turned into a deafening roar. The group realized they were trapped, and the fight for their lives had just begun. The shaking grew stronger, and the carvings on the ground began to glow brighter, casting eerie shadows across the walls. The whispers turned into overlapping voices, speaking in a language none of them could understand. The room felt alive, as if the very air had a pulse. Deka moved closer to the group, her glowing eyes fixed on Nia. "You don't understand the burden I carry," she said, her voice rising over the chaos. "The spirits chose me to save this village. Without their whispers, this place would wither away." "No," Nia shouted back. "You're not saving anyone, you're enslaving them. Look at the villagers. They're empty, like their souls are gone." Deka smirked. "Their sacrifice keeps the whispers satisfied. You've eaten my food, haven't you? You already belong to them." The travelers looked at each other in horror, realizing the truth in her words. They had all felt stronger after eating Deka's meals, but at what cost? As the room trembled around them, Nia's mind raced. She knew the whispers weren't just voices, they were the source of Deka's power. If she could stop the whispers, she could stop Deka. But how? "Kofi!" Nia yelled over the noise. "Help me find where the whispers are coming from." Kofi nodded and began searching the kitchen with her. The other travelers huddled together, unsure of what to do. Meanwhile, Deka stood by the glowing symbols, her hands raised as if commanding the spirits. Nia's eyes landed on a large jar tucked in the corner. It was filled with a swirling black mist, and the whispers seemed louder the closer she got to it. "This is it," she muttered. "This is their vessel." As she reached for the jar, Deka turned sharply. "Don't touch that," she screamed, her calm demeanor cracking for the first time. But Nia was determined. If this is what's feeding them, then it's time to break their hold. She grabbed the jar, its icy surface sending chills through her body. The whispers turned into screams, and Deka lunged at her. The room erupted into chaos as Nia and Deka fought for control of the jar. The travelers yelled in panic, and the glowing carvings on the ground began to crack, as though the spirits themselves were being pulled apart. The jar felt impossibly cold in Nia's hands, as if it were alive and resisting her grip. Deka's strength was startling, and she clawed at Nia, her face twisted with fury. "You don't know what you're doing!" Deka shrieked. "You'll doom us all!" Kofi rushed to Nia's side, pulling Deka back. "Let go of her!" he shouted, trying to wrest Deka's grip away. The other travelers joined in, creating a barrier between Nia and the raging cook. "Break it, Nia!" Kofi yelled. "Destroy the jar!" Nia's heart pounded. The jar vibrated in her hands, the whispers turning into wails of pain and anger. "What if destroying it hurts the villagers?" she shouted back, doubt creeping in. But then she thought of the lifeless eyes of the villagers, the eerie marks on their bodies, and the constant whispers in the air. This wasn't life, it was torment. Summoning her courage, Nia hurled the jar to the ground with all her might. The jar hit the ground with a deafening crash. For a moment, everything froze. The swirling black mist burst out, filling the room like a storm. The whispers turned into piercing screams, and the walls of the kitchen began to crack and crumble. Deka let out a guttural cry, falling to her knees. "No. You've destroyed everything," she wailed, clutching her head as if in pain. The mist swirled wildly before shooting upward, disappearing through the roof in a final haunting wail. Then, silence fell. The carvings on the floor stopped glowing. The trembling earth grew still. For the first time since they'd entered the village, the air felt calm. Nia staggered back, breathing hard. "Is it over?" she whispered. Kofi helped her up, nodding. "I think so." But Deka turned to them, her face pale and hollow. "You fools," she hissed. "You've broken the pact. The spirits will seek their revenge." The travelers looked at each other in fear. What had they unleashed by destroying the jar? As the group emerged from the kitchen, they noticed a change in the village. The villagers, once lifeless and dazed, were stirring. Their eyes no longer looked empty, and the eerie marks on their arms were fading away. An elderly man blinked, looking around as if seeing the world for the first time in years. What happened?" he asked, his voice trembling. Nia stepped forward. "You were under Deka's spell," she said gently. "But it's broken now. You're free." The villagers stared at her in confusion, then turned their gaze toward the kitchen. Deka stumbled out, her glowing aura gone, looking frail and defeated. She saved us," a young woman said, pointing at Nia. But Nia couldn't celebrate. Deka's warning echoed in her mind. The spirits will seek their revenge. The whispers were gone, but an uneasy stillness lingered. As the villagers gathered, Nia spoke softly to Kofi. "This isn't over. The spirits aren't finished with us yet." Kofi nodded solemnly. "We need to prepare. Something tells me the real battle is just beginning." The village seemed peaceful again, but Nia couldn't shake the feeling that danger was still lurking just beyond their sight. The air felt too still, the silence too complete. Even the wind, which usually whispered through the trees, was eerily quiet. "Do you feel that?" Nia asked Kofi as they walked through the village square.